Welcome, everybody. Letting in a last batch of people, and then we'll start the program.
So I don't see the waiting room, Paul, so I should be able under participants to know who's waiting while you're talking, right?
Okay, I'll try to do it also,
Oh,
but I would appreciate it if you can back me up on that.
so how would we do that? Make me a co. Hello,
I'm looking.
can you make me a co?
I'm going to see if I can do that.
Yeah, co-host. Should be able to.
Trying to find you. There you are. Okay.
Okay. Oh, Shelley Blitz.
Okay, you're now a co-host.
Excellent. And I'm letting someone in. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll take care of that. And be quiet from now on.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
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 I'm going to mute everybody now, and basically I'm going to read some housekeeping rules in a minute, which include muting you. So I'm going to mute you all right now.
Muted them.
Welcome, everybody, to the second annual Virtual Stroll down Main Street. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about delis, luncheonettes, candy stores, and barber shops. And we're hoping that you're going to be sharing all your memories from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even the 80s. The Virtual Stroll is a program of Mapping Main Street, which is a multi-year research project to identify what was, where, when on Main Street from the founding of the borough 130 years ago up to the present day. Mapping Main Street was conceived by the Bradley Beach Historical Society and Museum, BBHS, in partnership with the Bradley Beach Business and Community Alliance, the BBBCA. And I'm Paul Nishampkin, the president of the Bradley Beach Historical Society. I see that Paula Gavin is on from the BBCA. Welcome, Paula. And to sit back and enjoy the ride, the stroll down Main Street. Let's see if I can get this thing to work properly. I'm going to have to stop the share for a minute. I'm sorry, but got a problem with the way PowerPoint is working on the share. Okay, I'm going to share again. Okay. Our agenda. You just got the welcoming and the credits. I'm going to go through Zoom etiquette, and then after that, we're going to have a brief history of Main Street. We'll talk about candy stores first, then barber shops, then delis, and then luncheonettes. And by the way, this is one of the maps we've been using in Mapping Main Street. It's the Sanborn maps from the 1930s. And basically it has every single address along Main Street. Actually, it has every address in the town of Bradley Beach. But we're going to fill out in our databases information about every single business that ever existed in every single one of these locations on Main Street. Housekeeping. I've muted you all, and I'd like you to stay muted unless you're called upon to speak. And you can actually get my attention by raising your hand. And for those of you who are not used to Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a bar that includes the ability to raise your hand. You can usually do that either through, I'm looking. There should be a reactions button. I don't know if you see that. And at the bottom of that, there is an ability to raise your hand. You can also wave your hand around, and I will try to see it. You can also use the chat. Before the program begins, take some time to introduce yourself in the chat. Include your name, your hometown if you wish, if you're not in Bradley Beach, and use the chat to ask questions or make a comment, and we'll try to go through all those before the end of the session. Also, it's possible through the chat to share a memory or story, which hopefully we'll have time to call you up and let you tell us about. And please include in the subject of any story you have what it's about: delis, luncheonettes, barbers, or candy stores. Okay, if you're muted and you want to unmute yourself temporarily, you can do that easily by holding down your space bar on a computer, and you can talk while that space bar is pressed down. Or you can go to the microphone in the lower left corner of your screen and click on the mute button, which is right now has a red line through it, and you will unmute yourself permanently. But please don't do that unless you want to talk. We want to cut down on all the noises in the background. Early Main Street. In front of you is a map of Bradley Beach running from Sylvan Lake on the left to Fletcher Lake on the right. And this is from the 1880s. You'll notice this is after the town had been partially mapped out for plots, but there were very few buildings indicated by the little yellow and pink squares. Notice at the top, there is a railroad track. There's a little dotted line at the top you can see going along. And there's a road called the Turnpike. The Turnpike ran all the way down from Asbury Park to Belmar. And it was the first road that brought people in, originally by stagecoach, and then eventually by trolleys, and then by car to our town. So logically, the Turnpike became our main street. And basically, that's where all the first businesses were built, other than the ones that were on the beachfront, which Bob Flood covered the early development of that in an earlier Zoom session that we did last year, which actually you can find on our website. Today, the Turnpike, Main Street. By the way, this is one of the trolleys that used to come down along the Turnpike, bringing people to Bradley Beach.
Leave in 5 minutes.
Excuse me? Early businesses on Main Street. This is from 1893. You notice that already there was a barber shop on Main Street. Not sure exactly where yet. We haven't really researched all the businesses. We've got over 2,000 to get through. And these early ones, some of them are a bit of a mystery. But there was a Pioneer Barber somewhere on Main Street in Bradley Beach in 1893. You can see at the bottom, one of the stores that we covered last year J. Paintner had a grocery store at Main Street and Park Place, which we covered last year. That building now at 900 Main Street is where Schwartz's Drugs was, and now where the carpet store is. So Main Street really started to develop early, and it really developed fast. You can see in the background of my picture, if you're looking at the screen, this is a postcard from about 1910, and you can see behind my head where Schwartz's drugstore was, where the carpet store is now, which in those days was Paintner's grocery store. And you can see that Main Street was pretty built up on this block between Ocean Park and Park Place. Let's start talking about barber shops first. Who recognizes this corner? It's the corner of 2nd, 3rd. Warner Drugs on the corner. It's now the Bradley Pharmacy. And you can see just to the right of Warner's Pharmacy, a red awning, and it says Lee's Barber Shop. This was the,
Oh, wait, can you make this full screen? It's not a full screen. It's, we see,
there's a problem. I make it
Oh.
full screen and I can't seem to get to the next slide.
okay, okay. I think we can live with it then. Okay,
Can you live it? Is it big enough?
yeah.
Okay, good. Here's another view looking north along Main Street. You can see the barber pole in front of Lee's Barber Shop. And a picture here of the barber pole again with some people standing in front of the store. And I'm not sure who these are. Is there Andy Rossman on the call?
No,
Unfortunate. He actually, hope he joins us later. He can probably tell us who these people are. This is fairly early, as you can tell by the cars. I'd guess it's probably the 30s or 40s. And I'm not sure if these were associated with Lee's Lee's Barber Shop or the appliance store next door. I think the gentleman standing to the right may be from the appliance store that was located there. Evelyn, what do you know about Frank Render and his son Lee? Do you know when they started business?
I know the father won the barber shop in a crapshoot. That's what Lee told me. That's how his dad got it, right there on the sidewalk. They were playing craps.
Very interesting. So Frank Render ran the business for a while, and then his son Lee took over, and they
Yes.
ran it right up until 1985 when your group, our gang, came in, correct?
Yes. Correct.
And here is a picture of one of the original barber chairs from Lee's
Right.
Barber Shop that you
Exactly.
used in our gang. Want to
And
tell
when
us
we
about
moved
our
across
gang?
the street, they used a refrigerator dolly and we just wheeled them across the
Wheeled
street
them across
where
the
they are
street.
now.
And that's where, yeah, that's where they are.
You're now in Hair Love, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
But originally you started off in Lee's space. And here's an article from 1985. And it describes the changeover from Lee's Barber Shop. The washed out red awning with Lee's Barber Shop written in faded
Right.
white letters is all that remains. Soon that will be gone too.
We kept that for a very long time.
So this is from 1985.
Mhm.
And I see it goes on to say that the regulars from Lee Render's shop still shuffle in occasionally for a trim. They seem rather bemused by the ladies who now wield the buzzing shears that make it cut high above the ears.
Absolutely.
He had to teach us the haircuts before he left for Vegas. When he retired, he went to Las Vegas. We never saw him again.
No,
He was a great guy, great to us.
great guy.
And you want to tell us a little bit about the store in those days?
Well, they used to say he gave the quickest haircut in the East. He would spin the chair around and you were done.
And the thing between a good haircut and a bad haircut was 2 days.
I think he said 3 days.
Oh, 3 days.
Give the hair a chance to grow a little bit.
So how many years did you stay in that location?
6 full years.
Uh-huh.
6 years. 6 years.
But we outgrew it almost immediately. So when the upholstery shop became available, we decided to make the move.
All the way across the street, right?
Across the street.
Well,
Well, we love Bradley Beach and we wanted to be right there. And it was easy for our clients because a lot of our clients came from Bradley Beach. So we just wanted to keep them there. Local.
you're still doing that, that's for sure.
That's right.
And there are lots of people on who were your clients, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, so
Hi to everyone and thank you for all the years. We really mean,
Paul.
Yeah.
Bob Flood and Paula Gavin both want to speak, so
Okay, well,
they have their hands raised.
they can unmute themselves. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Lee Render originally operated out of the Palace Theater. They had 2 stores to the left, one to the left and one to the right side of the main entrance into the theater. And he operated there for a few years. Then he moved down south of Vic's on the same block as Vic's. And then his third location, of course, is the one we all remember, up closer to the drugstore, the one you depicted in the photograph earlier.
Yeah, this is what makes it so interesting. People moved around a lot in Bradley Beach.
They did.
As
Yeah,
property
especially
stores
early.
opened up, they would say, I prefer to move over there. And that makes it our life
Right.
rather complicated to pin down all the different locations for each business.
Yeah, most of the barber shops people tended to go to geographically.
Sure.
Bradley Beach had at least 5 barber shops at one time, and all in competition with one another. But those of us that were on the north end of town tended to go to Ralph's.
Right.
And I remember going to
Right.
Lee once, and that was because, when you go to a barber shop and you look in, you see 6 or 7 people ahead of you, and you had a rush to get someplace, you went to another barber shop. So I remember Lee cutting my hair one time, but he was quite popular on the southern side of Bradley Beach.
Bob, I'll get back to you and you can give us a full history of all the different barbershops in just a minute. I thought I'd let Paula add her comment. Paula?
Yes, it is a comment. I just think it's amazing, Paula from the Bradley Beach Business and Community Alliance, that today we have 4 barber shops and no less than 5 salons. So we have attracted those businesses really aggressively, and it's wonderful for this small town to have sort of feature. And I think it's great to hear the starting stories. So thank you.
Well, obviously, a lot of people in Bradley Beach have a lot more hair than I do. In going through the newspapers, the first mention of a barber that I found was from 1927, an article about Rocco Sciarappa. And he opened a store called the Ritz Barber Shop on Main Street at 4th Avenue. And he was joined by his brother, Charles. And it mentions that they had operated a barbershop under their name on Main Street near McCabe Avenue. So obviously he'd been in business a lot longer than 1927.
Right.
And Bob, are you going to be able to cover any of that history?
Yes.
Okay, good. I
The Sciarappas owned the Ritz first, and then they sold it to the Ferrara family.
Right, I have the article on that.
Yeah, the
This is-
Ferrara family had it for a long time, but the Sciarappa family, especially Fred Sciarappa, operated a barber shop in Bradley Beach for many years. And then in the late 1920s, he started cutting hair on Sundays. He started with Easter Sunday and said he would be open all future Sundays. This caused eventually, over a period of a couple of years, a law to be passed in New Jersey that you couldn't cut hair on Sundays. But it wasn't enforced. So Fred Sciarappa, Ralph Napoli, and some of the other barbers continued to cut hair on Sunday until the law came in, and they were all fined. Fred Sciarappa was fined $50 in the late 20s, which was a lot of money. His employees were each fined $25, and Ralph Napoli was fined $25, and cutting hair on Sundays then ended in Bradley Beach.
Fascinating. This, by the way, is when the Carl and Charles Ferrara did a ribbon cutting ceremony with Mayor Eugene Lowenstein and the Commissioner Albert Kerms in their new Ritz Barbershop. I think they might have, this is
Debbie
in the
Greenstein
60s.
is on.
I think they had,
She just sent me a little note.
She can see you?
I got to mute you.
I don't know how to
Sorry,
get to.
should be able to see her.
Sorry.
Could you please? Yeah, right. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Anyway, this is in the 1960s. I think they might have had an earlier barbershop location. I have not dug into that. Any comments, Bob? You want to fill us in? I see that behind your head.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the remodel was, but their parents, one of the, I think it was Charles' father, owned the shop called the Ritz, which was near 4th Avenue. It wasn't too far from the corner of 4th and Main.
I can't do this.
This picture was actually of what I'll call the second generation of Ferraras that had the barbershop.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit more? I see you have a whole slide in back of you with a history of a lot of different barbershops. You want to get into that in a little bit of depth?
I could. Those of you who are familiar with Zoom, up on the top right-hand corner, if for the next 2 minutes, I guess, you were to put in the feature that allowed the speaker, then it would illuminate a little bigger picture behind me. But I have the same picture Paul has been showing us of Main Street in Bradley Beach. And the reason I put that, I also put a map up here with an arrow on it. The arrow represents where the photographer was when the picture of what Ralph's barbershop looks a little bit like today over in this lower corner here. It's directly across from what used to be Schwarz's drugstore. But it was one of 5 barbershops I mentioned back in the 1920s. And Ralph opened that shop in 1921, and he was still there in the late 1960s. When I was a kid back in the 50s, you could get your haircut as a kid for 25 cents at Ralph's Barbershop. I found one thing interesting, I should say Sue found it, that is during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, all of the barbers of Bradley Beach got together and set a common price for haircuts. And they all agreed they would cut hair for 35 cents for an adult male, so that they were not in competition with each other and kept basically their geographic customers that they had been accustomed to having. One other interesting thing we found in the research, and again, Sue found this, was that when you do a research on newspapers.com, we kept putting in, or I kept putting in Ralph's Barbershop, but Sue changed it to Ralph the Barber. And when she did, she found a most interesting story. It was a story of a little girl who in 1902, the girl was born in 1995, but in 1895, in 1902, she became adopted, and her brother, who was only a few years older than she, we think he was about 11, he actually went west, and the two kids never saw each other again. The boy, after World War I, after about 17 years, came back to Sayreville, New Jersey, where they had grown up, and he tried to find his sister, and he couldn't. He got a job in New Brunswick, and then one day some guy bumped into him and said, "Hey, I know you. We grew up together in Sayreville." And the guy explained, "Yeah, I came back from Montana because I was looking for my sister, and I can't find her." He goes, "Oh, I know where your sister is. She's in a little town down the shore called Bradley Beach." And the guy then was able to reunite with his sister, and they hadn't seen each other between 1902 and 1919. But when they met, he realized that she was married and she had children, and her name was Mrs. Ralph Napoli. She was the wife of the fellow who owned the little barber shop on the corner.
Are there any other barber shops that you know of?
Yeah, there was one in the Pierce building, which is directly across from what used to be the fire department, directly across
Right.
from the municipal building.
At
It was
Lorraine.
Yeah, on Lorraine. It was upstairs in that building. And then, of course, there was Fred Sciarappa's, which was across from the post office area. I did find an article where Fred Sciarappa's his barber pole out front, which was a mechanical barber pole, was struck by an automobile and was inoperable for a little while. But the barbershops were basically like every 2 blocks. You had Lee Render in the south, and then a couple of blocks north, you had the Ritz, and a couple of blocks north of that, you had Fred Sciarappa. A block north of that, you had the one up on the Pierce building, and then a couple of blocks north of that, you had Ralph's. So they tended, as I said, to have a geographic patronage, but there were 5 at one time. There may have been more.
Actually, I have a note in the chat from Bruce Domalewski. Mentions another barber on the southeast corner of Ocean Park in Maine. Mid-60s, name unknown, gave the trendy razor cuts to the teens. Anyone?
That was Walter Nutt. Walter Nutt took over Ralph Napoli's barbershop. And yeah, he would do that. Yeah, that Walter changed the name, from Ralph's to something like Walter's Continental Barbershop and Salon or something to that.
Moving with the times, right? Okay, we can come back to barbershops, but we've got a lot of things to cover. We've got candy stores next, and I'm throwing in ice cream into that mix. And I'll start with a very old picture, way before everybody's time here. This is Wyckoff's Ice Cream Depot at 25 Main Street, all the way downtown in Bradley Beach. You can see it was quite an elaborate ice cream factory, I guess, with, carriages to deliver ice cream. So they must have had a heck of a business. I'm sure that they had a branch on the, probably on the Ocean Avenue or something. Do you know much about them, Bob?
Yeah, just a quick mention that 25 Main Street is the old 25 Main Street numbering that came down from Neptune, from Ocean Grove.
Right.
That was located on the block that became, I don't know what it's called today, but there used to be a Quick Check on the corner there across from the laundry. It was on Main Street on that block. So the right.
It wasn't downtown. It was the old numbering. Okay.
Yeah, it's up between Park Place and Newark Avenue. On the east side of Main Street.
Very complicated history. Before actually Bradley Beach became Bradley Beach, it was Ocean Park for a while, and I guess they started numbering, at the southern boundary of Ocean Park, which was around McCabe or Ocean Park, right?
Right, because Bradley Beach was part of Neptune, and so the numbering came from Neptune south.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right.
Okay. How many of you recognize this picture? It's from, I believe, 1964. And the reason I've included it, it's the opening of the Tri-Town Little League with the Avon, Bradley Beach, and Neptune City Little League teams. And at the what's now the Veterans Memorial Stadium. And across Main Street, you'll see a striped awning. How many of you know what that is? Don't all talk at once. Bob Flood does. Anyone else?
Yeah, Bruce knows. Bruce
Yeah.
knows. You put
Yeah,
it,
Saltzman's. I lived around the corner from them on Evergreen Avenue, or excuse me, Monmouth Avenue at the time.
Uh-huh.
Sweet woman. She lived in the back of the store. You walked in the front, on the right was the candy counter, and her old cash register. To the left was Hoffman sodas in a cooler. She had a bunch of other things for sale. I never saw anything sold other than candy, cigarettes, and
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
and sodas from there. But yeah,
she advertised it as being a variety store, but from what I hear, it was really just soft drinks and candy.
Yep.
And obviously, she had a
Yes.
built-in audience with all the kids playing baseball across the street.
Yeah, cigarettes also. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is one candy store. This picture actually,
Paul,
yes,
I wasn't able to make the wave work. So Mrs. Saltzman sold any penny candy you'd ever heard of. But Bruce thinks she was a sweet old lady. I thought she was scary. And I never figured out what was sold in the rest of the store. But the routine was that you went to Saltzman's before you went to the movies. And you stocked up on wax lips with syrup in them and jawbreakers and the dots on the paper, and then you took all that to the movies to sit through the 3 previews and the cartoon and the feature.
excellent. Yeah, it was a lot cheaper than probably buying it at the theater, right? You're muted, Deborah.
My mother, it's Debbie, and my mother would give me a quarter, and that fed my sister and me. So yeah, it was cheap.
The next picture, I believe this storefront is actually not in Bradley Beach. This is Ray Kramer's candy store, but I think he must have been in Asbury Park at one point. And look at the numbering, 1121. I think it looks to me as if it might have been an Asbury Park store, but he moved around between the towns. This is an interior view. I believe he's in the middle here. And you can see the typical kind of stock in a candy store, awful lot of cigars. And his store in Bradley Beach was sold to the Spiegel family. And this is a picture of Sarah Spiegel and her son, Mel. And I tried to get Mel to join this call. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but I found a thread of discussion of the store in about 2 years ago. And basically, I know that they took over from the Kramers. And I believe, Bob, do you know what the number was on this? I think it was around 500 and something.
No, I don't. Not as familiar because we frequented, as Debbie had mentioned, the Salzman for the people on the south side of town. On the north side, we went to the Little Green Store
Right.
on the corner of Hammond and McCabe and got all those penny candy things. Actually, we'd get them not just before the movies, but we'd get them before we went to school or at least at lunchtime.
Yeah, the Little Green Store in McCabe, which I believe it's called Ralph's at one point.
Right.
Sadly, that disappeared a couple of years after I arrived. I think in about 2005 or so. That was
Yeah,
a
it was,
terrific little
used to
store.
be, used to be Sophie's. And
Yes, yes.
then it was Louis, and then it became Ralph Castellano's for many years.
Yeah. We would go there before we go to Hebrew school and stock up on snacks, which the teacher
Right.
hated because the room they stuck the girls in had ants. But so that's where our money was spent on the north side of town.
Now, there was another candy store, which was Francis Sweet Shop at 318 Main Street.
I know the story better than you.
And Francis, David,
Oh.
David,
Oh, I was going to say Spiegel's was a small grocery store. I think it was 1 block south of McCabe on Main Street. And I remember it had a kosher meat department.
yes,
Kramer's was a candy store between Lorraine and McCabe Avenue. And that candy store you mentioned near the Little League ballpark, I remember as a kid, if you could hit the ball far enough, you could bounce it right up to the store, which was on the other side, I think, of Main Street. My old memories of the early 1950s.
yeah. David, I believe the Spiegels actually ran the candy store and at another location, the meat store, kosher meat store. So that they had the multiple businesses going. Does anyone remember Francis Sweet Shop, or is that before all your time?
Yes.
I remember it.
Yeah,
Let's hope-
I worked there for about 8 months for Emma and Charlie Robinson.
Marie, did you say that you remember it? Am I hearing things?
Beatrice is the daughter of the owners, but she's on the phone and I don't know if she can speak to us,
Oh, that's a shame.
but she is on. We're
I
trying.
would go there
hard.
almost every day.
But
Can you hear me?
obviously they'd have been in business there from the 30s through the 40s and
Okay.
probably into the 50s, right?
Yeah, definitely into the 50s, into actually probably the very early 60s.
Thank you.
I mentioned to Jane, I think maybe to you, that's where Susan's mother met her father.
Can't get into speed.
What's that?
Was one of them working there, or they're both just the customers?
No, Sue's mother was working there in 1946 when Jim Slocum walked into the store, and he went home that night and told his sister, "I just met the girl I'm going to marry," and he did. So
Yeah, in researching it, I found that they were constantly advertising for new staff there, so they must have had a rapid turnover of young people working in the store. They also they apparently had a soda fountain. Is that correct?
oh yeah.
They should be able to hear you. Let's see what you're not.
Beatrice has now unmuted herself. So maybe she can talk to Beatrice. Can you weigh in here? I don't think so, but she's back on, unfortunately.
I'm sorry that we can't hear from her.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Dick Shyatt.
Hi, Dick. Yes, go ahead.
So I lived the block, right down the block on 4th Avenue from the candy store. And I went to the dentist so many times from eating so much candy at the candy store right around the block from me. It was my second home. It was really, really good as a kid. We used to roller skate just up there and make a left onto Main Street and go to Francis Sweet Shop. And with a nickel, you could get a bunch of candy.
It sounds like an interesting store. I take it
it was great. Yeah, it was.
they advertise every year about their Easter basket, so I take it that they were big on chocolate bunnies and all the various molded chocolates.
Yeah, if you have a moment, I'll jump in and give you a little background. I worked there for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, probably in 64. I'm trying to think, 64, something like that. And Charlie and Emma Robinson was working for it. when you went into the shop on the left was a large multi-shelf glass case, and that was where the candy that they produced in the store was displayed. Of course, behind the counter there was also standard candy bars, cigarettes, and such. Across from that chocolate case was the multitude of newspapers and magazines that the shop sold. They had a soda fountain counter with, I think, about half a dozen swivel stools, and across from that was 3 booths. Typically, the soda fountain was like something you would see in Mel's Drive-In, Fonzie Mel's Drive-In, or Back to the Future, where they would go in there and there would be somebody behind the counter whipping up all the wonderful ice cream sundae scoops, milkshakes, malted milks, egg cream, banana splits, and things that we would do. But the ice cream that we dispensed, or at least I dispensed at that time, was the fresh scooped pints and quarts for takeout. And I think that was because refrigerators and freezers in the early 60s weren't as large as they are now. And not everybody made the trek to Food Fair or A&P in Neptune City to bring back ice cream from there. I don't think Carvel had opened up in Neptune City yet. In the back, Charlie made the candy. That was the candy kitchen in the rear of the store. Before I get to that, there was also a small pool table and jukebox in there, which the Robinsons always turned down the volume. And anytime a kid put a quarter in for some songs, a dime or a quarter in for some songs, the volume would be down, and there was no arguing with them. Nobody played the jukebox after a while. But going back to the candy kitchen, it had a large tripod gas burner. It was outfitted to hold a large copper candy cauldron where the sugar was cooked with the other ingredients until the correct temperature was reached. It was poured out onto a very large marble slab table. And there, depending on what it was cut up, let's say vanilla and chocolate caramels. It was allowed to set and then cut into the 1-inch cubes for the chocolatier to dip. Fondant was also created for like peppermint patties and small flavored creams. It was also cooked, same fondant was cooked with an enzyme added and then immediately sent to the chocolatier for rolling in a cherry with the fondant, which then 3 days later, you had a chocolate covered liquid cherry, and it was great. The chocolatier in the very back room, which was unheated except for a little heater by her legs, had only a small window looking out into the alleyway that I think still runs behind the shop. And it was ideal though for, maintaining the temperature that you needed with the chocolate. Charlie also made molasses and various flavored taffies at that time. So even being an older gentleman, it was great watching him do what he did, with the taffy and the molasses. He would cook it, roll it onto the table into a snake, and then transfer it to like a huge wall-mounted hook. And he would tug, pull, stretch, and then whip it over the hook again, and then repeated that many, many times until he was satisfied with the texture and the consistency of the candy. He was an artist for sure, and I'm pretty sure he said he learned it at the May department store in Baltimore. I don't know. I'm trying to recall where he was from. I think he said the May department store. The greatest demand for the candies was, of course, between Valentine's Day and Easter, Mother's Day in there also. He pre-ordered decorative boxes, which various shapes and sizes and designs. Pink and red hearts were the favorite. The 5-pound box was the least favorite. The boxes would be displayed on the shelves above the newspapers and along the entire south wall. And a customer would come in, select the box, be told the price, and then typically Charlie or Emma would always pack the boxes. The help never really did it. And I don't know, it was great. It was really good. The chocolate, if he ever ran out up front through the year of anything in the glass case, he would make up a small batch of that again. But typically the volume was in the times that I said.
Oh, wonderful memories. Thank you.
Yeah. Too much?
No. Here's another one that you probably all know about. If it ever comes up, hold on. There we go. Jane Logan's at 600 Main Street, corner of Brindley in Maine. And they served Jane Logan ice cream, and it actually was more of a luncheonette than a candy store. But I put it there because it's famous for its ice cream. Any memories of Jane Logan's?
Wasn't that George DiNardo's store?
Yes, it was. At one point, he bought it. Yes.
So the woman behind the counter at Jane Logan was named Tekla Height. And she wore one of those little like uniforms with an apron and a fluffy thing on her head. And she was just the nicest person. And she and her sister, she was a widow, and she and her sister lived in a big house on Fifth Avenue. And when we used to rent our house in the summer, we stayed in their back house. And the secret, they're long dead, so that I can tell you the story. They both liked to drink, and they would often fall asleep in the yard on a Saturday or Sunday, and it would start to rain, and they wouldn't wake up unless we went and shook them. So.
Any other memories?
But they were both lovely. She and her sister both lovely people.
Any other memories of eating at Jane Logan's?
Maxine Cohn, Greenberg said that she used to eat lunch there when her mom was teaching. Maxine, have anything to add? Okay.
Okay, let's go on to other luncheonettes. So, first one that I have a picture of is right across the street, catty corner from where Jane Logan's was Stally's restaurant. It's where the Peter Parker Real Estate is now, right on the corner, the southwest corner of Brindley in Maine. And it was run by Mrs. S. Schechner, who I believe was probably Sally Schechner. Any relation, Norma?
No, it's spelled differently.
Sorry?
No,
No, just a coincidence.
Different
right.
spelling.
No, it's spelled differently.
Oh yeah, okay. So it is. Schechner.
Yeah, we don't have a K.
Okay. Anyway, she apparently came down from Newark and set up a business on the corner here, and they completely redid the interior, which you can see in this postcard view.
It's nice.
And I don't have any research on it for this, but there were a series of restaurants on this location for quite a while. I noticed old pictures that also had earlier restaurants there.
I'm having all kinds of problems.
Any memories of Sally's? No memories of Sally's, eh? Is it before all our time?
Our time, before our time.
Okay. How about the Shore Diner? Jimmy Sargusa.
Oh,
Marie, is that related to you?
father-in-law.
Unmute yourself, Mary.
Speak up.
Marie, you're muted. You can.
Where is 810 Main Street between what two streets?
That's between McCabe and Ocean Park. It was a aluminum faced diner, like one of those 1950s era aluminum diners.
Oh, Kemp's Diner. We knew it as Kemp's
Right.
Diner.
Yeah, that's it. That's the same place.
Yeah. Mary, we can't hear you. I don't know I don't know how to unmute you.
Trying to ask her to unmute.
Do you know how to unmute? You're not on a computer, I see.
I unmuted. No, I'm on
Okay.
my phone.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Marie. Was Jimmy Sargusa related?
Was my father-in-law.
Uh-huh. You want to
And
tell us?
when he worked at Kemp's Diner, and my aunt and uncle owned the Bradley Beach coal yard. And my mother would spend the day, and they'd give me a dime, and I'd go across behind the diner. It's where the senior citizens is now. And I would have his rice pudding, never knowing that he was going to end up being my father-in-law. And I mean, my mother-in-law told me so many stories about the diner. And that Bruce Springsteen used to go there before he was popular, and how generous he was. And of course, Jack Nicholson. And when Jack Nicholson's brother-in-law died, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law were friends with Lorraine, her husband had died. When they got to the funeral home, they said to, Lorraine said to my father-in-law, Jimmy, everybody keeps coming in and saying, oh my God, he doesn't remember me. And she said, so don't feel bad, because how can he remember? And my father-in-law walked in and he put out his hand. He said, Jimmy, I haven't had a good cup of coffee since your diner.
Oh, wow.
So,
And it was just, I hated to see it go. I loved it. And of course, he was the most generous man in the world. So but when you talk about all these places, the Green Store on McCabe Avenue, and they just make my heart warm. I just feel so, when you're 86 years old, these all mean a lot to you.
Marie, when did the diner finally go? What year?
I guess my kids, probably 1976 or 77.
Uh-huh.
Because my kids were about 5 or 6 years old. And I would have loved to have taken it over and run for him, but it was just a wrong time in my life with the kids.
Yeah.
They were too little to leave. And I mean, I went to the movie when it was 9 cents.
Yeah.
I mean, the Palace was 9 cents. And then we'd go to the Francis Sweet Shop and have a sundae for a banana split for 35 cents.
Wow, splurging.
I mean, and my kids, my husband took them to Lee Render's Barber Shop. My son to get his first haircut, because that's where he got his first haircut. So and of course, our gang was one of my favorite beauty parlors. I wish they were still in business. How are you, Evelyn? You look wonderful. Did you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
You're muted, Evelyn.
Evelyn, you look terrific. God bless you.
Well,
You're muted, Evelyn.
Unmute. Thank
There.
you, Marie. I was happy to see you on this today.
Evelyn, you look wonderful. Both of you do. I said, I wish you were still there. I missed you terribly.
You sound great, Marie. It's so good to hear your voice.
I know, and I often wonder how you're doing. And now I'm so glad that I got to see you.
Doing okay.
I mean, for 86 years old, I'm hanging in there, but I don't have a good beautician, you know. I mean, it's hard to find. So Evelyn, I just had to come in and I would say, okay, I'm here. And when I'd walk out, everybody'd say, I want to look like her, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a nice time. It was a
It's
very
different.
nice time.
It's
I don't
different.
live in Bradley Beach anymore. I live in Shark River now with my son and my daughter-in-law.
Okay.
But when you
Oh.
know, but there's so many things that we used to do. We used to go to Phil's Spa on a
Well,
Saturday night. You got,
You know, I was hoping that
you got the Sunday papers.
I was hoping that Julia that Sandy was going to be on, Phil's daughter. And unfortunately, she has not joined us. But I would have loved to have started talking about Phil's Spa with her. If anyone has memories about Phil's Spa.
Oh God, yeah.
David?
I have a memory. I was
It was
either
wonderful.
Yeah, this is now 75 years ago. I was in kindergarten or first grade, and there was a cute girl in our class. Her name was Lois, and I met her on Main Street, and I maybe had a nickel or dime in my pocket, and I invited her into Phil's store to have an ice cream soda with me. And then I realized afterward, I didn't have enough money to pay for both of them. But Phil let it go. I never forgot that. And it's amazing. You get to be an older person, and these are the stories stick in your head like a burr in your memory.
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
Julia was telling me about her father. Phil's Spa was right across from the Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And basically, Phil, like most of the businessmen in town, were all members of either the ambulance corps or the fire department, all volunteers. Phil used to just, whenever there was a call, he would just leave the counter and go right across the street to the ambulance corps, and they'd go out and deal with the emergency, and basically just shut the business down and go across the street. And I think a lot of the businesses in town were like that, where you had these guys who all lived in town, they all had their businesses in town, and they were all volunteer ambulance corps or volunteer firemen.
Yeah, Phil's
So-
was directly across the street from what is now the parking lot between the Biazzi Center and the municipal building. It was
Yeah.
like directly across from there. So he was close to the first aid squad. But I only remember going there once. Normally when you left Bradley Beach Grammar School at lunchtime, because they had no cafeteria in those days, you would walk home and your mom would have lunch for you. But I had a friend who I thought it was pretty cool because his mother worked and he would go to Phil's spa every day to have lunch. And I thought that sounded like the coolest thing going. So I asked my mom if I could do that one day. And she said I could. So I got the money to go to lunch at Phil's spa. And I had enough money to get a cheese sandwich and tomato soup. That I recalled distinctly. But the cheese sandwich and the tomato soup, although they were probably really good, it wasn't mom's cooking. And it kind of dissuaded me from ever really wanting to go to the diner again. I preferred going home to mom's cooking.
So my family lived on the south end of town, so we were shore luncheonette people for two reasons. But I will tell you why Phil's was important. We were shore luncheonette because Sue and Saul Rubin were friends of my parents. And I love going there because we could have things that my mother didn't have in the house, like bacon and Coca-Cola. So she couldn't come home from work. My sister and I went to Sue fed us BLTs and Coca-Cola. But Phil's was important to us because New York with the Sunday New York Times Saturday at midnight in Bradley Beach, which my parents did almost every Saturday night.
How many of you remember Stewart's root beer?
Wait a minute, Paul. Libby Meehan raised her hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Libby, go
Wait.
ahead. Unmute yourself.
Libby?
Hi, my family moved to Bradley Beach in 1975 when I was 12, and I loved comic books. So I remember going to Phil's spa and, looking over the comic books and buying that. But can somebody explain to me where the name came from? That was always like a real mystery to me.
I wish Julia was here. Sandy was here. She would be able to tell us. I will ask her. I will pass the word on.
Okay.
Doesn't Phil Janowitz's daughter still live in Bradley Beach?
Yeah.
Who?
Phil Janowitz, the one who owned Phil's spa, his daughter.
His daughter does. Julia Rand, she's known as now. Sandy
is that her? I know. She lived in the corner house.
She lives in their house. They're both Phil and his wife are dead.
Yes, and the daughter is on the corner. Isn't Monmouth Road, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
She would probably know where the name came from.
She would. Unfortunately, she's not on the call today.
Okay, well, maybe somebody could find her.
Yeah, we will. And Paul, Bruce had a few other comments about the store plus Jim's Diner.
Okay.
Bruce?
Yeah, I was just, I don't know what time whether you have a hard stop. So if you were taking notes on various luncheonettes, I added a couple of more, which was the Shore Luncheonette, Tony's,
Right.
Phil's spot. We discussed Phil's Picnic House. I don't know whether, I think that's still Bradley Beach. It was up at the very north end of town.
What's it called?
The Picnic House.
Not sure which address that was at. I have some other ones that were at the north end.
Yeah, that was way up there past Ballard Boulevard. You had the tire repair place, and then a little bit beyond.
There was
looked like
Ferrer's.
that. Yeah.
This used to be the Spick and Span restaurant. It became Ferrer's. And
Okay.
this is all the way up.
Yep. And that was, I think, also became the picnic house somewhere along the way in the early 60s.
Yeah, I think it went through a number of name changes.
Yeah.
pic-
And the other one was, we were mentioning diners, we mentioned Kemp's, but also Jim's Diner was up on Main Street also. I think two stops in, or in from Lorraine Avenue, I think right next to north of Maddie's 5 and 10.
Right, right.
And yeah. And
Yeah,
that
this
used to.
place,
Go
that
ahead.
Paul has pictured here was the Stewart's Restaurant. That was north of the tire place between the end of Bradley Beach and Ocean Grove.
Well, Stewart's Root Beer Station was at 1119 Main Street.
Right.
And Ferrer's was at 1204 Main Street.
1204, okay.
As you can see from this ad.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that I'm thinking of was on the east side of Main Street.
Yeah, there was on the other side, there was another restaurant up there that I don't have any ads or pictures of. In the Market Basket.
Oh, yeah, the Esposito's on the Market Basket. Now there's the bowling alley is there.
Yeah, yeah. And there seemed to be a lot more street life on the north end than there is now in the old days. Okay. The Stewart's Root Beer Station, is that before all your time, or do you guys remember that?
I don't remember Stewart's ever. And I mean, I'm really old, but I don't remember that.
Then it must be something from the 40s.
The only knowledge I have of the Stewart's Root Beer is that in the summer of 1940, when my mom and dad met at a dance at the casino in Asbury Park, my dad asked my mom to, go out and have like an ice cream or a soda or whatever. And this is where they went. They went to Stewart's Root Beer.
Wow.
Kids, they used to point out that this is where they, not so much where they met, but they had their first date.
And when you've got a picture of their menu, and the hot dog is 10 cents.
10 cents.
Hot dogs are $6 and $9. It's amazing.
Well,
And a nice cold root beer for 5 cents.
Yep, and a chicken sandwich for 15 cents. Those are good prices.
Hi, can I mention something?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Marie, go ahead.
This is Diane.
Oh, Diane.
Yes.
Hi.
When I was 10 years old, we moved to Bradley Beach out of Newark. And I heard Bruce, who is my brother, mention Tony's, which was right by Master Baker's. And when I was in high school in 63, we always stopped there for cherry cokes, my girlfriend Joanne and I. That's Joanne Wasserman. I see her brother Howard was on here before. And Tony used to serve us with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Yep.
And the whole cigarette turned into an ash and it never fell. We asked him, he wouldn't tell us how he did it, but it was smoking. But that's where I was when I heard about the assassination of President Kennedy. We were sitting in there, put us in shock in 63.
Huh.
I used to love Bradley back then. We lived in 3 different houses. And I would travel through it one time, took pictures where we used to live or come down for the summer from Newark. I think that's all I have to say, so someone else can have
Thank
a turn.
you. Thank
Sorry
you very
for
much.
butting in.
Okay, let's go to delicatessens now. There's obviously some overlap here, but one thing about the delicatessens, they all seem to be kosher in the old days. I don't see any Italian ones.
They were.
Well, can
Who
you hear
remembers
me?
the Bradley kosher on Main and 4th?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dick.
Okay, so my name's Dick Shiat. I worked in that store during my college summer days with the Gibbs family. And my cousins and all worked there also. It was like a team of my cousins and I. And I would work in the summers there, cutting the meat, the corned beef, working in the back. And it was like a family thing for us. I had two cousins that worked there. And when they stopped working, another cousin worked there. And then some friends of ours worked there. It was a wonderful place to work. The summer crowds were amazing, of course, because Bradley was inundated with people, but it was a wonderful experience. So I did there every summer and every vacation I had while I was in college. It was fun and great memories.
Dick, was that 401 Main Street?
I think it was. It was right at the corner of 4th and Main.
Yeah,
on
that's
the
where Hatch
west side of
44
the
is
road.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was good. I did it for 4 summers and vacations when I was home from college.
So the Gibbs family was lovely. Irv and my dad were golf buddies, but the story that I like is about Mrs. Gibbs, who fixed my friend Judy Poplar up with her nephew, and they are now married well over 50 years. So there was more than locks in that place. There was love in the air.
Okay, let's go on to, this may be before most of your time. Schwab's at 510 Main Street. Mrs. Jenny Schwab, formerly chef in big hotels.
No, never heard of it.
It must be from the 40s. Because here at 510, the next place that was there was called Sherman's. You ever hear of that one? Sherman's Restaurant and Delicatessen, formerly
Yes.
Brian's
Yes.
Restaurant.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Knishes, stuffed derma,
Mm-hmm.
corned beef, pastrami. Anyone remember that place?
No, I don't.
No.
Wow. I didn't realize there were so many restaurants in Bradley Beach.
Oh, there were tons of them. How about Carp's?
Oh,
At
yeah.
627 Main Street.
Oh, yeah.
Carp's Kosher Deli.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a competitor to Gibbs Kosher Deli, Bradley Deli. They competed against each other.
And here's another shot of Mayor Eugene Lowenstein, who really got around, helping prepare a sandwich at Carp's.
We lived a half a block away from him on 3rd Avenue.
From the mayor?
From the mayor. And then when he left, Phil Duran, the mayor, moved on the corner, but the opposite corner of where Lowenstein lived. We lived at 308. They were both on the corner.
Here's a Carp's holiday parties with Santa Claus serving kosher food.
That's funny.
Well, everything. Remember the Lorraine Hotel? They
Yes.
had a wonderful kosher deli right on the side.
Yeah, that for a while it was a Grossman's Lorraine Hotel. I don't know if that was before your time or.
Yeah.
And they had that deli for a long time. I mean, they had it well into the 60s and 70s.
But it's not surprising that the delis were all kosher, because in those days, Bradley Beach was very Jewish. And we used to joke that the town was a third Jewish, a third Catholic, and a third whatever was left over. And at that point, there was a 3-person city council, and there was Mayor Lowenstein, and who was Jewish, somebody who was Protestant, and somebody who was Catholic. So it's not surprising that in those days the delis were all kosher.
For about 50 years, the candidates,
absolutely.
the candidates for each political party, each ticket would have one Catholic, one Jew, and one Protestant.
Yeah,
it was like Lebanon.
Yep.
Yeah. What I love about this is you could serve 20 people for $19.95.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's 5 pounds of meat.
Yeah.
And they were on Main Street. I guess that was on the corner. I don't know.
Yeah, 626 would be right up where Keith Winters. Just before
Okay.
that, the hardware store would have been on the southeast corner, and I think Carp's Kosher Deli was right next to it.
And then across the street was Maddie's 5 and 10.
On the
I
north,
worked in that
on the
store
nor- on the
too.
northeast corner, yes.
I worked in Maddie's.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did. Before I started working at the deli at Gibbs, I worked for Maddie after school and on weekends for about 2 years. Yep.
He was great. The people were just nice. That's all. He was.
I'll tell you a little story about Maddie.
Mhm.
I was in high school. I must have been about 17 years old. And I worked there a few days after school and on weekends. And once in a while, he'd have to leave the store. And this other employee and myself would run the store. And he came over to me one day and he said, "Hey, Dickie, if so-and-so comes into the store," the so-and-so was a competitor. I forget, he had a place in Belmont, a volume dime there. I forget who it was. He said, "Dickie," he said, "if so-and-so comes in there and he asks how is business, tell him not good." He didn't want anyone to know that he was raking it in with a good business because somebody might have started a competitive dime and quarter kind of store with him, something like that. But I can still remember that. I said, "Don't tell them we were busy."
He was the only person that I ever knew. At Christmas time, you could bring him a list and you gave him 20 people and you gave him, if they were female, male, and their age, and he would have a gift wrapped he did it all.
Yeah.
You couldn't get that at Bamberger's.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't include Maddie's 5 and 10 in this because we weren't talking about variety stores so much, but I've got a fair amount of stories about him and research. His name was Maddie Warshberger, I believe. Does that sound right?
No, Warschauer.
Warschauer, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Peggy.
Yeah, he lived next door to me in Bradley, 2nd Avenue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Steve Barkin, who couldn't make the call, always tells me about the Spalding rubber balls, the big barrel full of rubber balls.
That's right. Yep.
They would get them all. All you guys would buy your Spaldings there.
Yeah, we did.
They were slight seconds, as I understand it.
So if you're still staying on delis, I think this qualifies as a deli. In the mid-50s, there was an Italian deli between Ocean Park and McCabe on Main Street. I think it was Piancone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he actually parlayed that into Roma Foods. And then a couple of years later, I don't know how much, somewhere in the 2000s, he sold that or emerged with Vistar, which is now like a $3 billion enterprise. So congratulations, good things start in Bradley Beach,
Yes, well, he had a heck of a restaurant there, which is now Pagano's Uva. But
Paula has a comment. Paula Gavin.
Paula.
Hi again. This is so much fun because today we have 30 restaurants in Bradley Beach. We call it Restaurant Row. So the tradition continues. Some of them are takeout, but many sit down, but 30 restaurants in our half-mile town. So the tradition continues. So this is so much fun to hear the past.
And Piancones had large tentacles because I have lived in Washington for many years, and one of the places I'd have lunch next door to my office was a restaurant called Roma's, and their decor was industrial sized cans of tomato sauce with the label Piancone on it. And it turned out it was run by Mr. Piancone's niece and her husband. They were Belmar. Well, she was a Long Branch kid because Mr. Piancone was from Long Branch, and her husband was an Italian from Italy. And they had fabulous, fabulous food. But they were using Mr. Piancone's products in Washington DC.
I miss it. And I don't know how many of you know this, but Piancone's was Johnny Cash's favorite place to go. And Johnny Cash had a big
Well,
presence down the
well,
shore.
there-
He was the owner of the Berkeley Carteret for a while. I
Right.
don't know if you know.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, he had an apartment there, and you could tell which one was his because his wife had decorated it, and it was the only one with patterned curtains on the window that didn't match the rest of the hotel. But Piancone's bakery was fabulous, and they used to make an Italian meat bread that I can still
Ah.
taste to this day. It was just wonderful.
I was very sorry to see them finally close down.
Yeah.
Very sad.
And again, extending from into the delis, still on perhaps meat, Thompson's Market, which was up on by Bradley Boulevard in Burlington, actually used to.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so Thompson Market, and there was also a butcher shop between Swartz Drugstore and Park Place Avenue. I don't know the name of the.
Well, there was Tom's, I think, near Schwartz's.
Yeah,
but
that was probably the butcher shop, right? Yeah.
What was the name of that?
There was Tom's.
It was operated by Tom Flannery, and yeah, that was.
And there was a kosher butcher on the other side of the street, Dobbins. Yeah.
And then, but before Tom's, there was Purchases. He was toward Lorraine Avenue. And let me tell you something, they don't have meat like Purchase had today. I mean, he was just above and beyond. Everything was just prime. And then Tom's open, and he was a nice little meat store, you know.
Well, we'll have to do butchers next time. There were a lot of butchers in town.
Yes.
There were some on Newark too.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, Mendelssohn's Market was a deli down on Newark Avenue also. So that's I didn't know whether you're going off Main Street or not.
No, we're not. We're not today.
We're sticking to Main Street.
Okay. Okay. Well, you brought up Ralph's on Hammond Avenue, so I figured fair game.
No, we're skipping a little bit. We actually was it 2 or 3 years ago, Jane? We did Virgil's, the Marianne store on Newark.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And we did a lot on Virgil's. I have one more here that had anyone heard of Ethel's Luncheonette at 903 Main?
No. What year was that?
Probably the 40s. It must be before your time.
Yeah, from the research that we had done on the 900 block, that was open for a very short period of time.
It was called Zuckerman's.
It was Zuckerman's. It had different names because it changed hands frequently, but it was almost next door to Schwarz's.
It was 903. It says here 903 Main.
903.
And
Yeah.
903.
Young and.
Oh, you're
Oh,
muted.
I'm sorry.
19.
Paulie, I'm sorry I came late. Did you ever get to Roy Jackson's grocery store down next to the movies?
No, we didn't talk about grocery stores. So we didn't talk
sorry.
about Roy's. You want to talk about Roy's? Go ahead.
No, not necessarily.
How
I
many
say
of
I
you
came late,
remember?
so I missed the first 10 or something.
Okay. How many of you remember the United Services Market at 401 Main?
No.
Before your time, 30s and 40s through the war.
No.
Okay, that was before it became the Bradley Kosher Deli.
Oh.
The only market I remember that was open was the Market Basket that the Desposito's owned.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a sign on the boardwalk, one of the new ones for 401 Main, shows the United Services supermarket.
Oh, wow.
From back in the day. So I don't have much more here, but I'd love to, if there's somebody who remembers a luncheon or a deli that we've missed, please speak up.
So, Paul, not a luncheon or a deli, but at one point Sid's who had the hot dog stand
The hot
on
dogs.
Ocean Avenue,
Oh, yeah,
opened
yeah.
a hot dog
Oh,
place
yeah.
on the west side of Main Street at the south, at the
Wasn't that across
south
the
end.
border in Avon?
No, I don't
No,
think
it
so.
was-
It was still in Bradley.
No.
He's still in Bradley, yeah.
It was
then a
between
couple of
Lorraine
blocks
Avenue and
before-
Berkeley. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Couple of blocks
Julia,
before him was the Bradley Lorraine Hotel, and they had a wonderful restaurant downstairs.
Oh,
That's
yes.
right.
Yeah. But on Main Street.
But,
they
but
actually
this
had
was
branch
on Main
stores.
Street near the ballpark.
Right. The ball
Okay,
field,
so
yeah.
that was Sid's.
Yeah, that was Sid's. And, you know, he started on, in the Weequahic section of
Yeah.
Newark, right near my grandparents. And he knew my uncle from when he was a little boy. And when my Uncle Paul would walk into Sid's, he'd look at him and go, "Paulie, what are you doing here?" He had this tremendous memory for people.
Look, I know a lot of
But he was
you,
right.
I know a lot of you went to the grammar school, and I was asked by them to mention that on Monday, June 17th, they're having the 2024 Hall of Fame honorees, and they're going to be honoring Leonard Riley from the class of 22,
Mhm.
Betty Slocum from the class of 21,
61.
61, sorry, and a more recent graduate, Rear Admiral Brendan McPherson from the class of 81.
Wow.
And they're going to have an open house starting at 3:30 for any alumni who'd like to come back and tour the school. And then there's a suggested $10 donation to stay for the ceremony at 4:30, where people will be talking about these three honorees. How many of you remember Leonard Riley when he was a captain in the police
do.
force?
I
And
remember.
he still acted as your
remember.
crossing guard at the grammar school, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I'm still in touch with his son, Leonard. Leonard lives down in Austin, Texas.
Yeah. Well, hope you can come back for this if you're around. Okay, I don't have much to say other than we're the Bradley Beach Historical Society. We have a website, www.bbhistory.org. We'll be posting this so you can see the beginning, Peggy.
Thank you.
Give us a little time and we'll post a recording of this.
I know
And-
Sylvia Asher wanted to see it, but she got tied up and couldn't, so she
Well,
sends
she'll have a
regards.
chance.
One other comment on ice cream. Didn't it was later, I guess, 60s or 70s, across from Vic's, in between the movies and Vic's, wasn't there an ice cream?
Yes, yes, and
Yeah.
it what
Something went,
became
something,
animal.
yeah, something went in there.
That's what
I don't know what that
Yes.
was. But again, we
Mhm.
kind of forgot that one.
Mm.
Yes.
We'll have to look into that.
And the same thing, there was also fast serve ice cream at 5th and Main Street
Really?
on the
Yeah.
southeast corner of 5th and Main.
Right on the corner, because we lived at 608 Fifth Avenue, and and my father-in-law we used to have milk machines on Main Street.
I don't remember those.
Do you remember those?
Yeah, go up and get a quart or a half gallon of milk for like 25
You
cents.
could get
or
a quart
50
of milk.
cents.
I know. Many times he'd walk up in his robe and his slippers to get it at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried doing that and half the police force would come after me, you know?
Well, you could do it then, you wouldn't do it now.
Marie, do you remember the A&P?
Oh, of course, right on Main Street there.
Right on the, almost just inset
And-
from the corner of Fifth and.
Didn't it
and-
become the Ginger Snap after the Ginger Snap restaurant? When they
No,
closed?
I don't recall. I remember shopping there as a kid, back in the very late 40s, early 50s, when it was the A&P.
And I think it was there when I got married. I can remember going there to pick something up. I don't know. But I do remember right on Main Street there. We had everything. We had a dress store on the corner, across from the bank. It was great. 'You didn't have to leave town.
Nope.
I'd like to ask that Debbie in particular send the details of the love story that you mentioned where someone was fixed up with someone and was now married 60 years. We do have a very robust section on the website called Under the Boardwalk Over the Moon, Love Stories of Bradley Beach. And we have collected many stories of romances that bloomed into long marriages and some that went bust very early on. But
Oh, I'd be glad to, Jane, and it's lovely because they lived in Bradley Beach when they first married, but even after they moved to Ocean Township, Mark was a volunteer fireman for years and years and years.
oh, so I'd love that. And as we mentioned, Bob Flood's wife, her parents met at Francis's sweet shop.
Oh, wow.
We have early pictures and later pictures, which is what we like to have with the stories. So if any of you know other love stories of Bradley Beach, please send them to us and we'd love to post them
All
and share
right,
them.
so I'm going to talk to Judy this week because her birthday's on the 10th, and I will get her permission because she might say no. And then I will put the two of you in touch and then you can create a story.
Terrific, thank you.
And any of you
You're
who would
welcome.
like to help us with researching any of these stores, the ones you've mentioned today or any others on Main Street. This is an ongoing project. It's going to take a lot of work from a lot of people. If you're interested, even if you'd only like to research one store, please get in touch with me. You can do that by going to Paul N as in the Shampkin, at bbhistory.org and tell me that you're interested in doing some research and what you'd like to research. And basically, we can point you in the right direction if you don't have stories already and do some research on a store or some stores. We'd love your help.
Paul, I just had a quick question. I was going to ask some of the folks like David and Debbie and some of the others that graduated from what we used to call BBGS. What years you graduated? David, I think you were probably a year ahead of me, maybe?
I graduated in 58.
59.
Okay.
So
59.
Dick and I are 59.
Yeah, I
And
was
actually
19.
Howard's sister was in our class as well. And Alan Naftalis.
And
I'm
Howard
class of-
graduated.
I'm class of 56.
57.
Go, tell him.
Well, my husband graduated in 51.
57.
1960, Diane.
1960 here.
Just not.
I was
They're
the
holding,
same.
Still on mute, that's why.
That's all.
the school is holding a reunion on the 22nd of June at the fire department banquet hall in the evening. If you happen to be down for the summer or around, you might look into that. I don't know. I think that it's all years, so I don't know how many people come from your period or not. Probably a few.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Most of us have fairly good recollections and continuation of friends from high school and from college, but from grammar school, not so much. But I think about
country.
Paul Glasser and Stephen Weiss and some of the folks that I went to school with, and often wonder how they're all doing someplace out there in the world.
So Dick and I can tell you that we have Bradley Beach Grammar School reunions in Florida every winter because there are enough of us on the east coast of Florida who either live there full time or are snowbirds, and consistently the last year it's going to happen. Shirley Slott brings pizza from Vic's.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
So,
I can tell you what Lois Schertzer and Barbara Green and Richard Asher are up to. I saw Richard a couple of weeks ago at Dave Velasco's funeral. So,
the last Velasco boy is gone.
no,
Oh,
Kenny is still here.
Kenny's still with us? Okay.
Yeah. But
In
Elliot
my
is
high
there.
school, we just had a death. You would maybe know the name Mickey Schreiber. Schreiber
yeah.
family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw
A
that.
few days ago. Yeah. Yeah.
I just, oh my
Yeah.
God, I just texted him a few days ago
Yeah.
on something.
Yeah.
And he answered me.
Yeah.
Is Elliot Velasco gone? by now?
Yes,
Oh,
long
long
gone.
ago, long
Oh.
ago.
I
Well,
don't know his name, but he had mentioned Stephen Weiss and Paul Glasser. I
Yeah.
was in the same year class as them.
Yeah. Does anybody remember there was a liquor package store on Main Street, Picardo's Liquors? I remember that as a kid. And in the back of the store was a boy a couple years older than me. I met up with him when we were both working at the Monte Carlo snack bar. He was by then a Villanova student, and he met up and he loved music and he loved to, and he hooked up with Jim Croce, and he wrote the music for Bad Bad Leroy Brown, You Don't Mess Around with Jim. And he was a boy out of Neptune City, Bradley Beach. And his father had that liquor store. And he changed his name from Picardo to Tommy West, and he became pretty famous in Hollywood.
Oh. So Paul, one of the topics you might want to think about are taverns, bars and grills,
oh, no,
liquor,
absolutely.
because
No, that's
because you know, Irv Connor had a place on Main Street, and
Yep.
Phyllis Salo's father had a place on Main Street. So we had a lot of alcohol in Bradley Beach.
I know. Much to the chagrin of the founder, James A. Bradley, right?
Yes, because several of us were talking, I missed, someone had mentioned Paul Glasser and Stephen Weiss,
Mhm.
but I didn't
I
catch.
did. This is Diane.
Didn't
I was
Stephen
in
Weiss
school
move
with
to,
them.
Oh,
Las
you were in
Vegas?
school with them, yeah, okay.
Stephen
Didn't
Weiss
he
is
move to
alive
Las
on
Vegas?
Facebook.
Is he?
Yeah, but Sam Cooper passed away.
Oh,
Yes,
he
he
did?
did.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam was a good man. I
Mhm.
worked with Sam going through college. We took on a couple of jobs, and he and I helped clean the beaches in Bradley for a
Wow.
while.
Wow.
I have a
Well,
quick question. Does anyone have any plans in Bradley to reopen a kosher deli?
So from what I understand, there aren't enough Jewish people left in Bradley to have a kosher deli.
Oh, that's not true.
Nestor Winters has been very busy with a project to restore part of Agudath Achim, but Agudath Achim only has a congregation in the summer.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And if you want to help him, he has raised a lot of money, foundations and government and all, but if you want to help him with this, I know he'd be happy to have some help. I've helped him.
Good to know. The Wegmans has a kosher deli section, fairly large one. But I don't know of any others around here.
It's not this. That's not the same as having a hometown
Oh,
store.
no, of course not. Of course not.
Now we get our
where the maestro cuts the locks.
We get our full sour kosher dill pickles from Katz's. They mail them to us every few months out here.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Bye,
We've
everyone.
learned a lot,
Thank you.
and we'd like to learn a lot more. So we'll keep these sessions going. And I think we will honor your request, Deborah, and do restaurants next time.
Or
And-
bars and
bars,
grills.
Bars,
Yeah.
bars and grills.
Salmon spread.
Right.
Paul, on the question on this, I know it's a long-term project and the way things are going, what is the intent? Is this going to be?
The intent is quite clear, but the research is going to take a long time. We're building a database, and the database will have the names of the businesses, their addresses, the years that they started, the years they ended, what kind of a business they were, any memories that we collect describing their business, the owner's names, that sort of thing. And basically the database then will feed a front end, which will be on our website, which will be an interactive map. And you'll be able to see a map of Main Street, and you'll be able to click on an address and basically see what was there, or you'll be able to look up, delis, and then you'll get a list of all the different delis, and you can click on the names, and they'll come up with the full description with any photographs or ads that we have about that business. So in fleshing it out with material, graphic material, we'd love it if you have any photographs of Main Street, because that's something really missing in this town. People did not photograph the storefronts. It's not like Belmar. Belmar's got tons and tons of pictures of their storefronts. The same with Avon, but for some reason, people did not take that many pictures of the storefronts in Bradley Beach. And if you have any, I'd love
Ask
to
the
see 'em.
grade,
Yes, Deborah?
ask the grade school if they have pictures of the storefronts that we painted for Halloween. Dick, you remember us, we painted the storefronts for
right.
Halloween.
Yeah,
Up
we
and
did
down
that.
Main Street, and and kids did that for years, and I don't know whether the school might have some pictures of
I'll have
that.
to
Yeah.
ask. Betty Slocum is the person to ask on that. She was there for a long, long time as the
Okay.
school secretary.
Yeah,
And
this would have been back in the 50s for us. I don't know how
yeah,
long the tradition went on.
sadly, I don't think they kept very many of their archives.
Okay.
Anyway, we'd love it if you have any information about any businesses, pass it on to us. There's a place on our website where you can share your memories. Jane, can you describe the links there? There's some links where you can go in and just share your memories and just tell us the name of a business and tell us a story.
Or give us your love story, or just tell us, it doesn't have to be about Main Street.
Right.
And there's also an opportunity if you want to volunteer, because now we are also looking at starting a Century House project, which would be to celebrate homes that are 100 years old or more. And to that end, we are going to have training for families who want to learn how to research a property the right way. And we'll be having lots of tips, and it will come in the fall, and it will be actually the basis of the 100-year 100-year house project. So think about that. If anybody's interested, just let us know. You can do it through the website. You can also join the association, the society, or renew your membership online too. So I hope you all have a good summer, and thank you for joining us. Paul, you want to say your goodbyes?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure hearing your stories, and we'd love to hear more. Please take care.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks so
This
much.
was great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.